What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle. Welcome back to another Chaos Zero Nightmare video, and in this one I'm going to be teaching you how to farm Chaos efficiently, because you're going to be playing a lot of Chaos to get decks every season and do the new content, or just to have fun with the game. We'll start by talking about some of the helpful things to unlock in order to farm Chaos, and then we'll talk about the differences between Zero System and Seasonal, and then we'll also talk about the efficient pathing that you can have in Chaos runs. And then finally, we'll have a small crash course on Faint Memory, because it's a big topic, but the in-game tutorial has been updated to reflect it a lot better, and I think it does a pretty good job. Right now, Season 2 is winding down, but all of these tips should be good for the foreseeable future unless Chaos really gets overhauled, which I doubt it will, at least not for a while. In the menu, we're going to go first to Chaos, which is this screen here, but it's under the menu. And Chaos Manifestation, there's all the story versions of Chaos, and then also if you are lower level, you know, if your units are like level 30, level 40, then you're probably going to be here more. I believe level 40 on your account is when you get Zero System. It could be 30, but I'm pretty sure it's 40. It's been a while. And Zero System is where a lot of the magic happens. And I know for me personally, it took a while to figure out a lot of this just by playing. So it hopefully is going to be really good to explain it and people don't run into the same stuff that I did. All right, first, your Chaos difficulty caps at like 5 or whatever down in the regular Chaos Manifestation, just to check. But yeah, oh, 6, okay. First thing to consider is that in regular Chaos Manifestation, your level, or difficulty rather, of Chaos caps at 6. And that's totally good and fine. You can get up to 4-star gear, and only tier 7 though, if you have the, let me move this here. Yeah, only tier 7 on the save data value. This is a really important thing because save data value is your faint memory cap space. So we want this as high as possible. I believe right now the max is 16. First major important thing to talk about here though is on the top right, you have the toggle for nightmare mode. This should always be on. So like this is regular and it is slightly easier, but I don't think the difficulty of nightmare is actually that much harder. What this does is not only change the tier, you always get +1 tier playing on Nightmare, it makes it more difficult with stress. So that's what mental disorder is. It'll be like, if so-and-so, if this character goes to a shop and spends credits, then they get +1 stress, or if they get hit in battle and stuff like that. So your characters will collapse and break down more often. So you have to be ready for that, be comfortable with that. And they intensify it, and so when it says intensifies the breakdown, it means that it takes more cards to get out of that state. Normally it's I think 5, but in the nightmare mode it goes up to 6 baseline, and I don't know if any of the other effects change. It might get a little bit stronger in terms of like the really bad cards for it, but otherwise it's just a bit harder. On the other side though, you get increased epiphany chances. This is super good because this makes it so you can really push through your epiphanies really quick and get them by the time you get to the boss, and maybe have something you would duplicate at the first boss as a card. And then finally your save data goes up by 1 tier. That's an extra 10 points. Really good. In Zero System itself, they keep adding to this side. This used to just be 2 sides, but now it's up to 4. But the thing we're most concerned about is the upgrade tab. Every season, presumably this is going to roll over because season 1 had a different tab for this, like different bonuses, and then season 2 like really fleshed it out and added a ton more. The first tier is always just basic stat upgrades, which is really nice to have. But in this season, we got 2 different things added for bonuses. Well, technically 3. I mean, technically, we got 3, I believe, bonuses that are super good. So the first one is cognitive reconstruction. This is in the second tab here. And you can do these in any order. So I'd recommend, actually, if we know meditation is going to keep coming back every season, then we should be pushing to it first, because that's one of the best things to have. So meditation makes it so that you can re-roll your epiphany chance at a campfire. There's a new option. Instead of resting, there's one on the right. It says meditation, and when you click it, you have to pay some credits, and then you click the card you want, and then it re-rolls all of the epiphany choices on that card again. So you get another set of 3. You can get divine, or you can just change one you don't like and get something else. If you're keeping it or not, it could just be helpful in the moment. The next thing here in the second tab is the Senectus spawn. Senectus is commonly referred to as Cthulhu because it looks like Cthulhu. And this makes it so Senectus appears more frequently. And if you're very comfortable fighting Cthulhu after a while, which you should be, then, it will be a little bit of an extra challenge. However, you will also get access to the really good set of items that it drops, which means that having Cthulhu has a higher chance to appear, you can actually plan around possibly getting something, and it's not going to be once every 6 runs you see it or whatever it was before. It'll be mostly every run if you're taking a lot of the red nodes. In the final tab, the administrator mode, the next one that's super good here is the random card copy. If you're unaware, normally when you get to duplicate a card, it just picks 3 random ones, and there's still ways to mitigate that, like removing other people's cards. But even then, that's kind of expensive in terms of credits, and it gets kind of annoying. So what happens with this is that you can pick the combatant to get the 3 choices, which is way more helpful. So between being able to reroll your epiphanies, and then you pick a character, and it will almost always give you a choice of the cards you want, unless they have no uniques, for example. And this way you can consistently get 2 or 3 extra copies of the card that you want, because a lot of decks revolve around that, where they have multiple copies of either one powerful card or a couple copies of powerful cards. So both of these are super, super helpful. If they keep coming back every season in the Zero system, we should be getting those every single time. The rest of the stuff on the screen is either just achievements over a long period of time, or it's something related to the current week or season. For example, the Chaos Matrix is just a reward track you get for just playing Chaos, and you keep getting these blue orbs, and, even if you spend them, it's okay, but as you get them, this keeps track of it, and you keep getting stuff until you max it out. Weekly progress, this is each season, so every week you can do 2 full Chaos runs, and you get a bunch of goodies. Codex. This is really important here. As you saw in the regular Chaos, the max difficulty is 6. Zero system is how you push it over 6 all the way up to 10, as you can see here. With... oh, is this busted? I think the April Fool's patch probably messed up that box. That's kind of cool. But yeah. With Zero System and the Codex, you get 2 free merges, which is nice. And what you're doing here is you are trying to make a version of a Chaos that you want to run with a high save value data that you... or high save data value, sorry, that you want in order to give yourself a ton of points to customize the deck. And then you want as high of a rare fate occurrence as you can. 50 is the cap. And then you have to make sure these are modifiers you can handle, like that you can beat consistently. I will say though, almost any modifier up to, around level 86, 80 or whatever on the Chaos itself for the monsters is doable by any level 60 party, or if you're really trying to be conservative with resources, or you don't have a ton of time to keep grinding out stuff, then you can actually do this with level 50 characters or 55. I've seen people do that. New in this season are divine chaos codices that you roll, as you see here. These don't let you keep save data, so these are just challenge modes with extra bonuses, so they're just fun to do. They're different, and you get to interact with the deities of the game. And as you do it, you unlock the story of them, and you get rewards for doing so. I believe it's 40 each time, at least so far, with this. So you can do those, but keep in mind they don't give you save data. As it stands, I guess I'll re-roll this one here. So when you re-roll or roll for the first time on a Codex, you see this screen. The Galactic Disaster, you always want this active if it's in season, because you can use it for the season. And then the difficulty goes all the way up to 10 from 4. The way you get difficulty further than 6 is you'll come in here, you'll merge a Codex, and it'll be level 6. You beat it once or twice, depending on how high the level cap is. And when this gets over, I believe, level 70 or 75, then it's going to roll up to level 7. And then when you beat level 7 the first time, you can now make a Codex at level 7 every time. This does not reset per season, so I recommend pushing this up to 10 as fast as you can when you have the ability. As far as rolling goes, you get 2 free merges a day. This is what the screen looks like. So this is actually not bad. I would like this to be a little higher on the 30%, but this is pretty good. So data 14, the tier goes up to 16 if you have nightmare mode. So 15 is the highest you'll see here. And this is usually what you want to do, because level 14, 15, 16, your faint memory cap is, I believe, 160, 170, or 180. So I actually like that, so I'm going to pick that. When you are rolling these, you'll have an option up here to use, after you're out of free merges, to either use your blue orbs or your units, your actual money for your account, like the fictional money. You should always use the blue ones if possible, just because the money is used for everything else in the game, while the blue orbs are just used for pretty much this and buying certain upgrades, which they even phase some of those out. So you should be spending the blue ones if you have them. The last thing to keep in mind is that every individual chaos map, so Swamp of Judgment, Blue Pot, City of Mist, every single one of those can level up. And as it levels, you are able to unlock things with the reward info here. And everything up here will be in chaos going forward forever. So you get up to the top of this one, you get the this trinket here, this accessory, you can get extra fates, all that's really good. Plus you get a ton of stuff from just leveling it. As you can see here, each one has 30 levels, and the way to level it up is if you look in your exploration level tab, you see all these. It's to fill this out as best you can. So fight every monster you can, go to the unidentified areas, and if there's a fight option, fight them too, and then just pick up random gear that, you know, now it has the new tag on it, so it'll have like the orange letter N on it, which is very nice. But you get points for leveling up the chaos for each tier of item you find, and every time you find new stuff. So if you find, for instance, a level 3 the first time, it's going to give you 1 and 2 with it. So if you find something at 5, it fills all of it in. Leveling up the chaos is helpful, you get good stuff for it, but it can be pretty RNG dependent, so if you're having trouble finding new stuff each run, don't feel bad. Like, some of these took me quite a few runs to like max out. I'd be stuck at like level 26, 27 for a while. The other thing to keep in mind too is that all of these items, even if they aren't filled in here, they will appear in that chaos. You just have to get the event or kill the elite or whatever and get one. Now we're on the event tab of the menu, and if the season is in progress, like season 2 is right now, it's always going to be at the top. It should always be at the top, or at least very near the top. Because sometimes they'll put like a more important event that is like a shorter time frame above it. Otherwise, when you are here on the event one, just move into it down there. You'll have to do the story down here to unlock it each season. Plus you get to just learn more about the characters and all that, which is nice. And you get access to some things here. You get the supply store, which has up to 3 tiers of stuff. These come in every 3 weeks during the season, and you can just buy a bunch of stuff in here. If you're playing a lot and farming a lot, I highly recommend just buying out whatever you can. But some things aren't as important. Man, I could go through all of that right now, but just pick out whatever you think you need. And stuff like this that I leave here, this is probably the least important. Otherwise, everything else is very helpful or just fun for something in case of like the prism lenses, so you can get cool motion cards. Challenge mission, this is just achievements you can do and get stuff, so always keep track of that. And then you can go back to Zero System from here. And then finally, the seasonal chaos is right here in this little glowy ball. It's always in this spot, or at least it has been so far. And then you have two different parts of the season for events. You have the boss rush mode, where you can just fight harder and harder bosses. And then you have the special event boss, which is usually tailor-made for the current season characters to beat. You can do okay with other characters in these, but if you want like top spots in any of this, you're going to need the seasonal characters. As you see, all three characters from this season are here. So there's 9, Rita, and Tiff. All three of them are in every single top team. So you can still get pretty far without them. Like for instance, this is Diamond, and they don't have 2 of the 3 seasonal characters, but they still did pretty well. So if you're pulling the characters, at least put them to use in that content. When farming seasonal chaos, the difficulty goes from 1 past Zero System up to 11. And in terms of farming, you don't have to go that high, but it's still good to go that high to get the free rewards like crystals and stuff. And as you can see, difficulty 1 starts at level 30, and your save data is 3, but you can keep pushing this all the way up. And at 4, it's still level 60, so it's very similar to the Manifestation Chaos. And you don't get to re-roll this and whatnot, and you don't get any of the modifiers. But once you hit level 5 on this, then it jumps up and you can start getting the modifiers and the harder save data. So this is like the Zero System version of everything. As I said, you can push this all the way up to 11, but you do not have to. In fact, if you're farming, the one I would recommend is level 8, because at level 80, the enemies are still weak enough against level 60 units. Maybe 55, I haven't tested something that far down, but definitely level 60. These units will be much, much easier, even if they have giant modifiers of health and attack, like Tyrant right here. Even if you have minus half your life. Like, this sounds like a really bad combination. If I was playing on 10, where everything's, level 110 or 11 for sure, that would be pretty sketchy, because that's like, a lot of things can down you in like 2 hits at that point. But at level 80, they're easy enough that you won't feel the effects of this. The nice part too is that at level 8 for difficulty, the save data is usually up here, around, like the max you can get, I believe, is 14 on level 8. But honestly, if you're okay with not having a tier 16 save data of 180 points, then you don't really need to push higher than this, because you just get 10 less points. And the extra 10 points does matter, but it's very specific when that matters. However, what's nice is that the rare fate occurrence is always capped for the difficulty. So up here we get up to 40, but at 8, this is when it becomes level 50%. And 50 is the max. This does not get higher on this sheet of stats than 50. You can see all the way down here to level 11, it's still the same. You can also re-roll these for the seasonal currency. You can just keep re-rolling this until you see something you want at the difficulty you want. But like I said, I always stop at 14, because it's just pretty easy to get to 14, and then increasing it with Nightmare Mode to 15, totally fine. But you can get some 15s out of these higher tiers. You might be able to get it out of 8 as well, but I think it's super rare. You have to, so you have to have some really goofy stuff here. Usually it has Neglect, where it discards a card, so I don't like doing those. That's a really irritating one to play with. But there you go, that's a tier 15. And you bump it to 16, and you have like a max faint memory deck. A couple things to look at here on the level 8 that we picked for the seasonal chaos. We have Nightmare Mode again. Flick it on. Distortion Adaptation. This is something that smooths out the stats, and I believe it takes your averages into account. So what ends up happening is, as you see, our levels are still 60, but with this enabled, we can pick our lower level units, like Rest in Peace Tressa, and she'll be level 58 instead of 20. So if you want to bring someone lower level and you want to play with them, test them out, for instance, then you can do that and just throw them in there. Also, shoutouts to synchronization, where you can throw one of your units in here, and depending on how well you've done leveling the other units, it'll again take an average for you and give it to them. I usually play with this off because I'd rather just level the unit and get the rewards, but that's me. And so once you have picked a team that can do the chaos, you need at least one damage dealer, ideally, that can match up super well against this and carry everyone else through. When you are doing chaos also for decks, you want to focus on one person. You will not have the resources, the credits, the duplicates available to work on more than one person at a time. Just because you only get, right now, 3 events that duplicate cards. There's one actual event space and then one time for each boss. And as I said before, every character wants duplicate powerful cards. So that means you should only focus on one person. It doesn't have to be the damage dealer, like 9 is very ideal for carrying you through the current season just because she matches up the best against it. But even though I'm taking 9, if I wanted to work on Mika or Rita, then I would start focusing on them while I'm doing it. And then just making sure 9 gets a couple things to help keep her damage up. When I say focus on one character, what I mean is all the meditation and credits that you're going to use for it to reroll epiphanies goes to that character. You don't want to send them to anyone else unless you have a ton of credits and your main target is done for that run. The next thing too is you want to give them the gear first, and ideally the best gear you find will also go to them if it fits the playstyle. For instance, if I had someone else here instead of 9, such as Serennial or any other attack-based damage dealer like Rita, if I find the Cthulhu gun, which is a giant attack bonus, even though I have someone else like Serennial here, and I wanted to work on Rita, then Rita's the one that gets the gun. It doesn't matter about Serennial at that point. Whenever you start a Chaos run, you'll be greeted with 3 choices that you can use to begin the run. You'll have something random. Actually, all 3 of these can be random, but you'll have a choice of gear, a choice of getting credits. You may spend 100 credits because you start with 100 and get like a legendary item. You can convert cards or swap, or remove cards rather, not swap, or get epiphanies. There's a lot of different things that can roll together in a combination, but you will always have a very simplistic choice in the middle. So this is usually just you get something. Remove 1 card, or 100 credits, or item, like guaranteed. And the left one always contains the ability to drop the first 3 battles of monsters to 1 HP. Not really impactful, if I can be quite honest. It's a nice quality of life thing, because your first 3 fights are kind of free. And this doesn't apply to elites, so you can't rush to an elite and get them down to 1 HP. In the case of this one, we got offered a pretty good piece of equipment. For Rita and 9, it's something that if you spend a high cost card, it vulnerables an enemy. The one that's most dangerous is this one. Increases all combatant stress by 20, but they get something. In this case, they get an epiphany, which is super good if you want to come out of the gate focusing on someone. Like if I was going to build up, let's say Mika this run, because I already have a decent Rita deck. So if I was going to build up Mika, then I forgot about the April Fool's art. Hell yeah, dude. Yeah, so we got this. Then if we start the run and you have the very first potential slot unlocked on the character growth thing, then they'll come in and they get an extra epiphany for free. So out of the characters, actually I should have showed those too, but real quick, I guess we'll just go through this. And so looking at what you get offered, just look at what could be very helpful to you for that run. So in this case, you get a guaranteed legendary right now, and the easiest 3 fights, the 3 normal fights, are going to have more HP, If you have the thing that drops them to 1 HP, then this is a great combo because they stay at 1 HP. But these fates can be a lot of different things, so just get familiar with them and then think about which ones will be super helpful for you. Some of them are for farming, so we actually have 2 things that give us gear. Some of them can be for helping you beat the chaos a lot more easily. For example, this one where you duplicate created cards. Rita can create exhaust attack cards and have multiple of them, so you can sometimes create one more, which is nice. We got our random gear in this case. I'm just going to give it to Rita because, you know, she makes the best use of it. And when you are in chaos itself, you'll see this path. There are 2 levels. There's the exterior, which is what we're at now, and then when you beat this boss, it goes to the interior. Your pathing here matters greatly. Looking at the available nodes, we have red spaces, which are regular battles, just normal enemies. We have question marks, which are events, and events always have interesting outcomes where you can get stuff, remove cards, get unique items from the chaos, for example. And then we have campfires. There are 2 versions of campfire, so there's the basic one that's just orange, and you go there, you have a choice of resting, training, or meditating if you have it unlocked. But there is also a different version, which you will have the shop available, like by the time you start doing these, so don't worry about that. But anything that has the little shop stall on top of the campfire, that means DeLang's traveling shop is there, and you can spend your credits for removing cards, buying cards, or buying gear. So you always want to save up and hit a couple of these. You don't need to hit every single one, but you also don't just want to hit 2 for the entire run, so try and hit like possibly 3 or 4. That's usually a good number. The next one we have is the purple space. These are elite enemies. Elite enemies are worth doing just because you get a little bit of extra credits, and they drop gear. They can sometimes drop legendary gear that is zone specific. So if you're looking for that Fairy King crown, that gives you 6% crit chance from this chaos and also Swamp of Justice. You can fight the elite, and sometimes it may drop it. I don't think they can drop the mythic gear. I think that's boss only. But if you want other stuff, then taking the elites is highly recommended. There are 2 more modifiers on nodes that we need to talk about. The first one is this flaming skull. This means that that fight, whether elite or a normal battle, is juiced up in some way. Usually more health, sometimes more tenacity, sometimes no tenacity, which can be really annoying, or some other modifier in there. And it makes it a lot harder, but you also get more currency for doing it. So if you want more blue orbs and such, then do those. They're not that much harder that you should avoid them, but they are a little bit harder, so you should be aware of them. The other, and I think final, little tag on a node is the event space. Can have this swirl. This swirl is called Dimensional Tunnel. It's been in both seasons so far, and this swirl means that the seasonal event thing is happening there. In this case, we have arena right now, so if you want to go to the arena, fight in the arena, and get some arena gear, refine your gear so you can put like extra bonuses on your gear, then you should be doing those. There are 2 accessible ones each side. So exterior, interior. So you can do it 2 times. The game may give you multiple on the map. Like you may have one here and then like one here. But in my experience, I don't think they will ever be connected. So you can't do one and then jump down and do the other, or vice versa, what have you. So it's always going to give you one that you can hit on a path, and so you should be making sure that you hit that on your path in general. For pathing through the chaos, the first thing I look for is what I was just talking about. I will always look for a way to get to this. And so right now it can be from this node, or if I go to the bottom, I can go here and then back up. So you always want to make sure you have a way there. And then you look for the nodes that you want to hit on the way there. Personally, I don't like to hit a lot of campfires early. For one, you're not taking enough damage. 2, you have no epiphanies to meditate. So I avoid fires until like the second half, if I can. And don't get confused, because every part in the middle on the exterior and interior of every single chaos will have this crystal space. This is just a checkpoint. If you want to go back out and spend your Aether energy for the day and do some farming on materials, you can do that. Or it's just a nice little stop if you want to like take a break and, you know, put it down. If your game crashes or if you just close it at any point in Chaos, you're still going to be there, so don't worry about that. But if you just want to go back to the menu, you do it here. Plus, you always get like a little checkpoint reward thing, which is nice. For direct pathing though, as I was saying, I try and avoid fires. And in the exterior, I want to take fights. The reason for fights is when you have a fight or a combat node, then you have the ability to epiphany your cards. That means you either unlock a card from your set that you don't have yet, and it gets put into the deck, which is nice. Or if you have most of your cards unlocked, and very rarely if you only have like 1 or 2 unlocked, you get the chance of upgrading them, which is the other kind of epiphany. And in some cases, you can get a Divine Epiphany, which is like a double roll, essentially. So it gets 1 bonus, but then it rolls a second one, and those take up more space on your Faint Memory. And currently, Divine Epiphany fishing is the meta for deck farming. So every good deck is like, I'm talking about top tier deck that's like pushing leaderboards, is going to have usually 3 or 2 or sometimes 4 divine copies of cards, and then some other stuff with it. Not that you need those to do well, it's just nice to have, and the reason is because they let you cheat the system a little bit in terms of rules. As I said though, I like to take fights because you get money, you push your deck a little bit further by unlocking cards and epiphanies, and sometimes you get gear or whatnot. In the exterior, which is the first half when you're outside, I prioritize elite fights, and that's because, for 1, it's money, 2, it's gear, and then 3, you're, you know, really healthy, and even though you don't have a couple of your cards unlocked yet, the elites starting out aren't too bad, like their health and damage totals. The other thing too is if you want to fight Cthulhu, Cthulhu is very rare at the start. I don't know if it has a sliding scale of when it can appear, but it only appears in red spaces, keep that in mind. And because of that, I don't think it can appear for the first maybe like 3 or 4 spaces, but definitely past the checkpoint for sure. It can pop up past the checkpoint. I don't know if it can pop up before then, but I have seen it pretty early before too. Otherwise, in this path here, as I said, I value fighting. The events are still nice to hit because you can get removals and all that. But sometimes also, if you have an event that isn't what you want and you don't like the rewards, fight the event. You can epiphany your cards by doing so. With all that in mind, for this specific instance on the screen right now, the decision making I'm going through in my head is I see 2 fires on this path, so I really just don't want to take that. I know where the tunnel is, so I could take any of these and get up to it from this side, which is really nice. And I'm looking at other fires spread out around the map. So there's actually 3 if you just follow this one straight through on that path, which I really don't like that early, like this early rather. And there's still a couple here. So what I could do, and what I would honestly do if I was playing this out right now, is I would go right through here on the bottom. I get 3 fights, 1 event, maybe I can remove a card, really nice. I get an elite, which I love fighting, especially early. And then down here, there are 2 more campfires, but I can actually dodge it by going to another normal fight. But, you know, Senectus might be a possibility, so it starts to get a little scary. And there's also a lot of fights in a row, so you have to be comfortable healing and lowering stress and all of that, which is kind of tough when you take the 20 stress per character opening. And then after this, I can bounce back up to the middle and do another elite while avoiding this campfire. And after that, it's looking pretty good. And this is like the perfect spot right here for this shop. So what I would end up doing is, out of the 3 first choices, I come right through the bottom, drop to the bottom again, pop up to the middle of this, go through, and depending on... Actually, no, I have to go up, but I could do it right here. So it's either I follow this and go up, or I take the extra elite and go up. Me personally, I'm comfortable with elites, so I like to fight them, a lot of them. And so when I get here and go through the middle, I would jump up right here at the checkpoint. And then we get a couple more elites, and then we get the tunnel. And then we can actually recover and buy stuff and use the shop and all that. Like, this is almost an ideal start to the exterior for me personally. And, you know, if you follow the advice I'm giving you, it should be ideal for you as well. Because then you get up here, you get the arena, and then you drop down, you get a shop and a fire, and then you can either get another event if you're way too beat up to fight another elite, and then you get the final shop that's guaranteed before the boss. When you are on the interior is a bit different. There are some events that only appear in the interior, and those are like usually the biggest ones. So the deity duping a card appears in the second half, or rather the interior. Other zone-specific events for mythic gear will appear in the second part, the interior, and more divine epiphanies and stuff. So the second half of the run will always have the best events, and a lot of the ones from the front don't transfer, and you don't have to worry about it. There is some logic in taking a ton of events and knocking out those events from the pool, but there will always be more events in the pool because it's about 30 on normal chaos and then 41 or 42 on seasonal. So you can't run out of events. It's not possible. In this case, if this was the interior and I was already past the boss, I had some good looking stuff for my character that I want to build in this run, the pathing would change. All of the good events are in the second half for the most part. And so I would be focusing on events instead. I'm still avoiding fires, but instead of prioritizing elites, I'm prioritizing events first, and then red space normal combats after. The reason being that if I haven't fought Cthulhu yet, I want it to spawn. And so I'm going to take as many normal fights as I can to spawn it. And since all the events in the second half are better, I'm going to focus on those. So events first, normal battles second, elites third, fires fourth. But it's okay to move fires up in that list if you have already beat Cthulhu, or you are really trying to fix a deck or your gear situation because it's not going the way you wanted, so you have to force more items and rerolls into the situation. If this was an interior route with that in mind, what would change is instead of this bottom path where I get one event, I would go here and get two. And I would always be counting. Yes, I'm recording, okay? I have to play the game to record. But yeah, I would take these events and I'd be counting how many I can get to by the end. And that's like the top priority. That's the thing I need the most. So in this case, I get two here instead of one. So I go through the middle path, drop down. If my deck needed some extra meditation to fix it, I would go up here to this fire. Not just because I could fix something, but also because I get another event. And then coming through here, get the event again. So far, this path is looking like it's +2 on events. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the tunnel. Whereas if we go down here, we get 1, 2 before the tunnel. If we follow the way I was talking about for the exterior. That's a pretty big jump in terms of event spaces, although I think I miscounted. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this was 5, yeah. So I get 4 events instead of 2. So I doubled the event count. Kind of sick. And then up here, we'll take the tunnel and then drop down to this event. And hopefully we've gotten everything we need at this point, because on the final fire, hopefully we don't have to epiphany any cards, and hopefully we don't need to buy any gear. And then we fight the boss. If you're really serious about deck farming, do not be afraid to fight the first boss and then bail out. The reason being the first boss only takes about 20-25 minutes to get to, and at least you get a little bit of reward currency. I think if you abandon too early, like before the first checkpoint, you don't get to pick a fate when you start. You just get satiety, which is like 10% life, and a card, which is not as good as some of the other stuff. The final thing to talk about is faint memory. So ideally, you're going through the chaos, you're managing your deck the way you want, you're getting the gear you want. Also, you'd be fortunate enough to get the Cthulhu gun, sometimes a bad modifier, but I digress. And you're looking at this cap on points go up. When you're in chaos, it'll tell you what your cap is based on the tier of difficulty you're running. The reason the system is in place is because it makes it so a player can't run the easiest possible chaos with no challenge, like a level 30 chaos, and get the best stuff out of it. They want you to challenge yourself to get good stuff, which is totally fine in my opinion. As you can see with this save data, Serenial here has her items, she has the cards that I carried out of there, and then her memory used was 150. If you exceed your cap, so if your cap is 150 and you go to 160, what the game will do after is it will kick stuff out of the deck or rearrange some things. Sometimes it adds your neutral card, or not neutral. Sometimes it adds your starter cards back in, but it's going to be doing a lot of things in order to get you back under the cap number. And it's not going to try and get you to exactly the cap number. It's going to just do something, and the moment it hits you under the cap, then that's what it is. A good example is my poor Rita. I spent so much time trying to get this Flame of Eternity card, because that's what the leaderboard pushing requires. It's very helpful for the event boss. And I actually had a third copy in here. This deck is fine with only 2, but I had a third copy in here, and as you can see, I only have 120 points. My limit was 160, but neutral cards, I forgot because I hadn't really saved the deck in a long time, and it was late at night, and all these other excuses, I was lagging, etc. I went over my 160, and I went to 180, and so instead of adding one of my starter cards back in, it just kicked out the most important card because I had a third copy of it. And this went from 180 points down to 120. And you can't do anything about that because if it goes over, that's just what it does. So a bit unfortunate, and you'll mess up counting all this sometimes, and it's okay. So don't feel bad if you mess up. The point is to understand faint memory well enough where the times you mess up are rare. Like, it is not common that you mess up and go over the point allowance. And we're going to talk about the mechanics of that right now. Currently, for Season 2, the mechanic is fighting in the arena, and then you can modify a piece of gear after. The gear itself isn't modified. I can swap this sword for any other thing that I find, and it's still going to have this effect. It's weird because you need a piece of gear in the slot to refine the enchantment, but you can replace the gear after that, or replace the enchantment if you find another. So that's something you can do. But what's important to know is that this thing here, the mechanic, takes 10 points. So if I want to refine the gear, each slot that gets this helmet symbol is 10 points. So I have 2. You can actually get 3, but the third one in Season 2 comes from just a random event space. Like when you do the events, sometimes they give you gear as a reward, and if you inspect the gear, it'll show you an enchant that it gives you, or a refinement rather. And then the other one to talk about too is this hammer effect, not to be confused with the hammer itself, but once you have a refinement on a piece of gear, like this is pretty normal. When you beat the second boss, or in the case of the current seasonal chaos, if you beat the third unlockable boss, you get what's called a God's Hammer, and this also costs 10 points. I don't know if they're going to keep it in this season, but in the case of this God Hammer refinement, it's kind of crazy because it's got 3 tiers. It's blue, orange, and purple, which is mythic. And what it does is the second thing it rolls you on the hammer symbol is it copies a piece of equipment from the game and just puts it on something else. So you technically not only get this extra bonus that there's a lot of choices so you can customize stuff pretty nicely, your gear slot can be worth 2 pieces of gear. And that can be kind of crazy. For example, the Cthulhu gun that I keep talking about because it's just such a funny thing to me. The effect is 18% attack. And yeah, you get the Ravage thing, which is cool too, but this thing is rare and powerful, and you can even roll this onto a piece of gear. I have seen people, and I've been very salty when I see it, but I've seen a couple people have like a different weapon, just something different, right? But then I see this frickin' thing on the same side of it, and I'm like, holy crap, that is absolutely insane. So just be aware of that. If they keep the mechanic, we'll see if it stays that way. But just in case you're trying to finish up this season strong, we have a week left. keep that in mind as well. So the final thing is faint memory. We're going to round out the video that way, and the game does have a tutorial on this. They redid the faint memory system for this season as well. So if you played last season and you're coming back, it's different, but it's better, if that makes sense. Because before, faint memory used to be very convoluted and incremental in how it ramped up and you acquired it, to the point where a lot of people, myself included, were using like third-party tools, as in different websites, where people made custom calculators to keep track of all of this. But now they've changed it, and it's a lot easier, and their little tutorial description is actually very good too. So vivid memory, don't worry too much, like you'll never see this term again, but it's just what the deck keeps. Faint memory is quite extensive. The rules are as follows. There's a lot here to read, so if you ever want to just come back and read, you know, if what I'm saying doesn't quite land or you need to see it again, like remind yourself, then you can come here. The things to keep in mind though is that your basic cards, so if you just look at the basic deck that a character gets, these first 3 cards, the ones with the white text, you get 20 points of faint memory added each time you remove one. So you move your 3 starter basic cards, you get plus 60. Which means every deck, except for a couple instances, are going to try and get rid of all 3 of these. Meaning your cap space of faint memory to work with is already minus 60. And you can see how this really gets tight later on in farming, and understanding the rules and numbers is important here. So, yes, this will give you 60 points removing them. Removing a regular card that's blue text or yellow or purple, usually you don't want to remove 2 of these because most of these cards are like the bread and butter of the character. But in case you have a specific build you're chasing, you want to get rid of stuff like Form Convergence. A lot of people get rid of this for Tifera. Then these don't cost anything. So there's no extra points for getting rid of them. And in the case of transforming a card, it would actually be 40. The reason for that is we're going to talk about now with the calculations. But not to get ahead of myself, every deck is allowed 5 removals. So if you want to get rid of these 3 and then maybe Form Convergence and Dual Creation, I've seen people run this super lean Tifera deck where it's all just like Quantum Seed and then some Creation and Destruction Epiphany and then just Event Horizon. You get up to 5 removals. So don't add anything to the deck that you want to get out later if you're worried about that. However, if something goes wrong and you are miscounting your faint memory and then you realize it, you can remove a card later. So it's always good to have like 1 available in case something happens. But again, if you're really confident in the numbers, then you don't have to. Back on the faint memory tutorial, as I said, there's a lot here that it talks about. I suggest reading it anyway just to understand, but the things that matter are these numbers. Removing your basic cards, 20 points each, so that's usually 60. Your first 2 copies of a card, free. Your third one, 40 points. So if you remove 3 basic cards, duplicate a card 3 times, you're at 100. Again, shrinking that space very quickly just for really basic things to change the deck with. Next, neutral cards. So not monster cards, but cards that come from the shop or events are neutral cards. 20 points each. Regular Epiphany, which is the symbol right here, the little circle symbol in the corner, don't matter. They don't cost anything, even for neutrals. Divine Epiphanies, however, where we have this tag for a deity that blessed the card, those cost 20. So if you have a divine neutral card, that's 40. Even though your first 2 card copies are free, if you copy a neutral card, it's still 20 points because you're putting a neutral card back into the deck and it counts it as an individual value of points. If you dupe a divine card, that's 40. So you have to be very careful about duping neutral cards specifically because that's where it gets the easiest to miscount something. If it's one of your character's cards, for example, the Future Decreed we have here, if I dupe this, it's 20 points for the first 2 because you're duplicating the divine value. It's not the card itself that matters. It's 20 points every time you dupe this thing for the first 2 times, and then if you dupe this a 3rd time, it's going to be 20 points plus the 40 for the 3rd copy, which is 60 total. If it's a divine neutral card, that's 40 for the 3rd copy, and then 40 for the divine neutral card value, so that's 80. So that's the most important takeaway here, because that's the bulk of your points is going to be removing stuff and copying cards and divine epiphanies. That's always the hardest one to explain because, you know, without seeing something cause and effect immediately, it's just numbers, which is why I recommend really making sure you are comfortable with what the numbers are, and then come by and read this if you still don't get it. There is one more thing here for monster cards. Monster cards are pretty rare and normally not required. You see very, very few monster cards in like top tier decks just because they're so heavy. They're so expensive. They're broken up by tiers. So if you have a common monster card, it's 20. If it epiphs, it should just be 20 still, but if it divines, it's 40. The blue cards, I believe, are 50. And if you, again, have one regular epiphany, it's still 50. If you get a divine, it's 70 points. If you dupe a divine epiphany blue monster card, it's 140 points for one copy. This is why people don't run monster cards. They're too expensive to put into decks. But if you just want to have fun and it looks good and you want to do it, just be aware, right? Just be careful with what you're doing on your point scores. And then finally, the legendary monster cards, the orange ones, and this might include purple as well if there are any, I can't remember, but those are 80 points. That's just way too much. That's way too rich right now to slide into a deck and be able to do all the other stuff you need to. Those are all the farming tips I have for you in this video. I know it got really numbers heavy with Faint Memory. There's just no avoiding that, sadly. But what's good to know for that is as you're running in the chaos, you can see the Faint Memory tier like threshold and how much you've spent of it on the run. You can click on the character portrait and it'll show you. It'll be like 100 out of 150, for example. So even if you miscount everything, the next time memory comes up because you're adding something to the deck or duplicating a card, just remember what the value is at first, and that way you can at least count the new thing coming in. So hopefully you don't make any mistakes there. For building decks specifically, if there's something you're not sure about, like if you don't really know what to do for a character, it's always okay to come to the leaderboard on the season boss if it's there, and you can just check out what people are doing with their cards and decks that they're building for people. There are also outside resources like Pridewin, the Reddit, Stove's website, and all that. They'll help you build decks if you want to talk to people or just experiment. You know, there's some crazy stuff out there that people figure out and put into decks and perform very well with. And there's just a lot of cards not to keep experimenting with it anyway. So make sure you do some trial and error. It's okay if you mess up the memories and stuff like that. Just make sure you don't do it consistently and don't get too upset if it does happen. Otherwise, that's it for the video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.